Welcome back to the All Figured Out podcast. My name is Andrea Barr. Thank you so much for joining me again this week. Today, we are talking about something that touches every part of our lives, and it's something that nobody really teaches us how to handle well, and that is money. Not just how to make it or budget it, but how to think about money, how to feel safe around it, and how to not pass our money baggage down to our kids like some sort of emotional hand-me-down. I had the absolute pleasure of being joined by Jessica Moorhouse, who is basically your go-to voice of calm and clarity and just rational thinking when it comes to money. She is also Canadian, which I love. She's a financial counselor, best-selling author of Everything But Money, and she's the host of the More Money podcast, which has over 4 million downloads. Now, I actually was introduced to Jessica Moorhouse through my AirPods, or no, my earphones back in the day. It was about 7 or 8 years ago. I was making a big transition after I quit advertising, and I was trying to decide what to do next. So I was freelancing. At one point, I worked at a running room, and I was going to go back to school as well. So I was feeling tight on money, and I really wanted to find somebody who was young and hip and had some cool thoughts about money, who could teach me a bit about budgeting, who could help me and just make me feel better about my money mindset. And so I think I took to Google and I found Jessica Moorhouse. I found the More Money podcast, and it really changed the game for me. I remember becoming so obsessed with her podcast and listening to it to and from on the train, walking to work, and not obsessed in a way where I became hyper focused on money, but more so just I felt more empowered by listening to her. So when I saw that she had a book coming out, Everything But Money, I jumped on the opportunity to reach out and see if she would come on the podcast to talk to this beautiful audience who is probably going through one of the most expensive phases of their lives, and that is parenting. So this conversation is definitely for parents who are doing okay on paper, but still maybe feel like they're drowning in discussions around finances, the stresses of finances, and just feeling like I want to leave money for my kids, but I don't even know what money means, just all this stuff. So we are going to talk about your money past and how to heal it, your money present, and which is more about how to stop spiraling in this kind of expensive season, and your future, how to raise money resilient kids without passing your baggage down to them, how to talk to your kids about money, if and when you should do, if you should be giving them an allowance. Jessica has big thoughts on that, and just how we can just take the air out of the topic of money. I am so incredibly excited to bring you this conversation. I'm so proud of it. I'm so thankful to Jessica for coming on and sharing over an hour of her time to talk about a topic she knows best and loves. So Jessica Moorhouse, thank you so much for coming on, and I know you're all going to enjoy. This is All Figured Out. I'm Andrea Barr. I'm a career coach for parents, a mom of 2, and I absolutely believe that you can continue to grow personally and professionally while protecting family time. We're about to figure out this work, life, and parenting stuff out together. Jessica Moorhouse, thank you so much for joining me on the All Figured Out podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I gotta say, I'm a little starstruck here. You're laughing as if it's not true, but it is like...
I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what you got to be starstruck about, but I'm flattered.
Okay, this is the story. I never go on Threads.
Yeah.
Ever. Like, I think I've been on there twice. For some reason.
Oh, I love Threads. I'm obsessed. I go there every morning. I love it.
Good? Nice?
It's good. It depends on what threads you're on. Somehow got onto a lot of like author threads, and there's some juicy drama that I love. Oh yeah, there's a whole thing. Oh yeah, it's amazing. And then there's lots of great threads of like, maybe, the city you live in or just other kind of interests that you have. No, I love it because I stopped using Twitter like years ago. So it was nice to have a space again to, say my thoughts and things like that.
Okay. Well, I happen to go on it. Maybe I'll go on it more now. I happen to go on it, and I happen to see you pop up. I don't even know if I'm following you on there, even though I have been a follower of you for a long time. And you said something to the effect of, hey, I'm promoting my book, and what podcast should I be on? And I was like, this is my chance. And I wrote you an honest message saying you were pivotal in my career and financial journey. And I would be honored if you could come on my podcast and share your wisdom with my audience of parents who are in a financial thick of it, if we can say that. And you said, yeah, let's do it. And you have been so professional and kind and just normal to just coordinate with. And I just so appreciate you taking the time to speak with myself and this audience, because I think parents need a financial hug, you know?
Definitely. You know, it's funny about that. Once in a blue moon, I'll be like, hey, put the call out. What should I be, what show should I be on or whatever like that. And I'm totally fine with people like pitching their own shows. But the thing I think that's different is you actually followed up. Like it's wild that so many people are like, oh, on mine. And I'm like, if you really want me, you got to actually like DM me or find my email, which isn't hard to find. It's on my website. And actually follow up. But no one did besides you. So you win.
Oh my gosh. Isn't that funny? Because you see stuff like that and you're like, I was like, oh, she's going to get a million messages like, who am I to me? Talk about
you
the
always
mindset.
just got to shoot your shot. You never know.
Yes.
That's how I've gotten some pretty good guests on my show is I just followed up or just sent them an email. And they're like, yeah. But most people just are like, they just don't do the follow through. You got to follow through.
The fortune's in the follow up.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Who's your favorite? Who's the like biggest favorite guest or not favorite? Who's the biggest guest you've ever gotten?
Biggest guest. I'd say at one point, this is going back probably a long time ago now, maybe 5 or 6 years. But one that I really, I saw him on Twitter. I'd followed him for years when he had a blog. And he was just on there and I think he was doing a similar call out or something like that. I'm like, I'd love for you to be on my show. I was like, sure. And so I did follow up. I did the DM, I found his email or whatever. And it was Perez Hilton who,
it wasn't.
Controversial. But I used to follow him, back in like the early 2000s kind of thing when he was doing all that kind of stuff. And he said, yeah. And it was an okay interview. He was lovely. He was fine. But it was just like, oh, you just got to try. And so now, because I've had my show for about 10 years, it is a little bit easier for me to get guests. Like, honestly, a lot of them just come into my inbox, a lot of publishing houses, especially if they have an author that has a book coming out. So I'd say one that I was a bit starstruck, and this was last fall, was Mary from Selling Sunset. I don't know if you ever watched that show, but it's a real estate reality show that I've been watching since it started like 5 years ago. And so I know way too much about her. I'm like, oh my God, yes, I want her on my show. And it was, more of a memoir, but there was so much money talk in her book because she was a single mom for a number of years and struggled financially. And so to see where she is today, where she's like doing very well financially, has a very successful career, I'm like, oh yeah, we could definitely talk about this on my show. And so that was, for me, that was a really exciting moment.
That's so cool. But you know what? There's something about like interviewing or speaking with people, yes, like Perez Hilton, who were totally just out there and maybe seemingly random, but like the fact that you know something about them, I just think makes it for a more fruitful discussion. Like you and I, like you don't necessarily have a business surrounding parents. You're not a parent yourself, but it's like, but I have followed you for so long. I trust your advice. I want to put you in front of my audience. Yeah. And I know that regardless, we can just have a great conversation because I feel like I know you. I've listened to your podcast for so long. And
I get that a lot. Like it's been actually really trippy going on. Like I've gone to 7 different cities and hosted events to promote my book, and to have people that have been following me for a number of years, like sometimes some of them from the early blogging years. That was like, I started my blog in 2011. So I'm like, that is a long time ago. And it's so cool for people like, oh my God, you sound just like you sound on your podcast, or oh my gosh, it's crazy to meet you in person. I'm like, I am just a regular person, but I'm very flattered because it means that, all of the work I've put in these past 13 whatever years is actually impacting somebody, and they feel like there's a connection. And I want there to be a connection because that's really what got me into this world that I never expected to be my career. I started as a blogger as a hobby, then started a podcast when I was still working full time as a way to connect with people because I didn't want to feel alone either talking about money. And that's why I started out as a blogger is I wanted to share my story, but I wanted to connect with other bloggers who were also sharing their very personal story. And at that time, it really was a personal thing. People were sharing their income, how they budgeted, some of their financial failures, things like that. And there was no way to monetize that. You did it and you spent all these hours and wrote all of these blog posts just to make a connection with other readers and get those comments and the comment back and go to their blogs and comment and stuff like that, just to have that connection. Because that was the only purpose for the thing, is to kind of create this sense of online community.
Yeah. Whoa. Can you imagine? Like, that's pretty cool. I think that's why those people that like yourself who got into the blogging in those days,
Yeah,
I
the
think
early
why
days.
you're all so successful is because there was no way to monetize it. There weren't influencers. And so I think you guys were all coming at it from a super genuine place.
Yeah, and we would call out people who clearly weren't, because slowly there were kind of ways where you could make money, more like just freelance writing for other websites or blogs, or you can have ads on your website, but you really wouldn't make that much money. But we had at that time, we really did kind of self-police a little bit in just that if you said numbers, you needed to back it up, or, if you just had to be authentic and real and honest. And that was there was the time where lots of bloggers started out anonymously. And then there'd be the exciting moment of the big reveal. It's like, oh, this is who they are. This is what their name is, the real name. This is how they look like. And that was always really exciting. But yeah, the landscape is completely different now. It's wild to see, because even though it's been a long time, like, yeah, I started back in 2011. It's not like that. Like, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that long. It's only 2025. You know what I mean? And so it is wild to see where I started to now. I'm seeing this all the time on Instagram, especially. People will start an Instagram account and then within a year start making so much money they can quit their job and just do that as an influencer. I'm like, that did not exist. That wasn't a thing. Influencer wasn't even a thing. Content creator wasn't even a title. So it's wild to see how things have like gone. And there's good and bad things. So that's a whole other conversation, but it's interesting. Anyway,
It's
interesting.
super interesting. Your book, Everything But Money, is incredible. I'm just devouring it. And I'm going to be honest, there was a moment where I was like, is this book for me? And I think you do such a good job at the very beginning of just squashing any of that. And I was just listening from different people's positions and hats. I was just thinking about my audience too, to be honest, preparing for this interview. And I was like, oh, nope. Yep. Good for that person. Yep. Good for that person. Oh, I'm going to send this to my mom. Okay. I'm going to send this to my sister. Like, it was incredible.
Yeah.
Like, I was just really, you were just like.
Why did you think that? Was it because you had a certain expectation of what the book was and you're like, oh, this is a bit different? Or was it like, hey, we're going to get raw and real and vulnerable. Are you okay with that? And you're like,
oh, God, Jessica. Yes, and both.
Yeah. Yeah.
The moment where I was like, I'm going to be honest. You were so honest in your book. I'm going to be honest too.
Yeah,
I did grow up with money.
Interesting.
And I have shame around that. And so I felt very seen when you talked about that. When you talked about like the people who are like, well, it's shame, shame is shame. It's all shame. Like, it doesn't matter where you come from. And I was like, so who am I? I don't know. Who am I to? I have my own money stories though. Like, I don't know how to earn it because I've had it and I have it, or oh my God, it's like absolutely
everyone
crazy.
Has their things. But sometimes we just we have a lot of feelings about people who grow up with less or grow up with more. The people who grow up with less look to the people who grow up with more with a sense of like, if only I had that, then I'd be much happier, I'd have a much better life. And then a lot of people who grow up with more, they may feel guilt for the position that they're in, but they don't even feel like they have a space to acknowledge that or say that because no one cares when you have money. They're like, you privileged person, how dare you? But the thing is, and like I talk about in the book, is we all have our own stories and our own feelings, and they're all valid. And the problem I often see in a lot of like online forums, like Instagram comments or Reddit and things like that, or the blog comments back in the days, there's so much judgment towards other people and their money, when really we should just be eyes on our own paper and just focus on you and have a lot more empathy than we do for other people's situations. I mean, there's just so much judgment, but all of our feelings are valid. And the only way that any of us can heal rather is if we come from a place of understanding ourselves, but letting us have empathy towards ourselves and others. And most people have a hard time doing that. Like I explained in my book, I had a hard time having empathy because, I came from a certain background. And so I couldn't, and empathy is really just looking through life or the world through someone else's eyes. And understanding that people have different life experiences and they're not better or worse, they just are. Yes. But often we are, I think, told by greater society or just whatever the mood of the moment is, that this is good, this is bad. And if you come from money, then you shouldn't complain because you shouldn't have any problems because you have money, which is the predominant problem out there. But well, that's not true. A lot of problems come with money. And so, if the story that I shared, that one woman who grew up in extreme wealth, I think it was her great-grandfather. I can't remember how far the story goes, but I think it was her great-grandfather, came from nothing, started a really successful business, grew exponentially, and then there was all of this generational wealth that kind of flowed through and was inherited. And it wasn't simple. There's a lot of complexities, and there's a lot of hurt feelings. There's a lot of family strife. It was very complicated. And honestly, when I learned about her story, I'm like, I kind of feel lucky that I grew up in my situation. It was a lot less complex. And yeah, we didn't have that much money, but we didn't have some of those issues. And so, it's not necessarily that you have more problems if you don't have money. You can have the same amount of problems. They're just different problems. And we need to allow everyone to have a safe space to feel what they're feeling and go through, because otherwise, how are they going to better understand their money story, and how are they going to heal if we don't let them?
It's so true. And if you have so much shame that you can't even talk to, oh my God, it's just, there's so many layers to it. Like you're not supposed to talk about money to people that you know.
Yeah.
And then you're so conditioned to holding it in that, are you really going to feel that comfortable talking to your therapist who you don't necessarily want to see weekly because you don't want to spend that much money maybe on your therapy?
Yeah.
But then you can't then talk about your generational wealth because they're like, well, what are you complaining about not seeing me? I don't know. There's just, maybe I'm making that story up for myself, but it's like, it's just so complex. Like, who can you share that with? Who can you share that information with?
Well, even a little bit on that, I don't think I shared this in the book, but when I was talking with that woman, she shared that she ended up becoming a therapist. And one thing that, so she mainly focuses on working with clients who do come from generational wealth. And part of the reason is because she saw so many people in her circle, whether that was friends and family who were kind of in the same income bracket, be taken advantage by people. Be like, oh, you have money? I'm going to charge you a ridiculous fee, even when, ethically they should be charging the same fee because it's the same service. Yes. But they would charge incredible amounts of money to these people because they're like, well, they have the money. But you're like, that doesn't matter. Like, yeah, maybe you can, charge a little bit more, but not like 100 times more. And so she saw this and didn't like how all these people were being taken advantage of. And she wanted to be a more ethical therapist for people who kind of came from that. Because, again, just because you have money doesn't mean that you don't necessarily have what if, they are planning on giving away all of their money before they die or slow, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, again, there's problems on all sides. Yes. And we need to understand that. It's not easy. Just
never
because you have more money.
assume. Never assume.
Never
like
assume.
You actually said a couple times in the book, like you were talking about inheritance and that being a source of wealth. And I think we have to start talking about the fact that this is a generation that is about to, you probably know the stats, but this generation is about to inherit the most wealth that's ever been passed down. I understand from an article I think I read, and ever in history, because the boomers did make a lot of money. They were in a position to do that. And now this money is going to be going somewhere. And we're not talking about money still. And
I know.
This generation's about to get flooded with money. Like, that's scary.
Because money isn't always the solution. And part of the reason I wrote this book is because a lot of people think if I just had money, then I wouldn't have problems. And yeah, sometimes that is the solution. If it really is an income issue, your income is not meeting your needs. Fair enough. More money would fix that. You can pay your bills. You can pay your rent. You wouldn't have to worry about that. But for most people that I see struggle financially, it's not for like we work on their budget and we figure it out and we can perfect their cash flow. So it's not actually a money issue. It's about everything but money, hence the title. And so what I, kind of going off, we are going to see this big transition of wealth go to the next generation. And a lot of these people will not necessarily have the tools on what to do. And, we see this all the time with like lottery winners. They think, oh, great, now I have millions of dollars that I just won. I have no more problems. And the money's gone within a year or two because they did not have the tools. And by tools, it don't necessarily mean like, a budget, though that is incredibly important, but just some of the psychological and behavioral tools to know what to do and what not to do. And also like how to trust the right people in the industry to take care of your finances for you. I mean, when you have a lot of wealth, or even just, I do talk to people often when I'm just like in my daily life and they ask me, oh, what do you do? Or if I'm like at a friend's party or something and meet someone new, and then I tell them, and literally I put this in the book. It's like they start whispering. They're like, oh, really? I have something to ask you. And I've gotten people being like, I actually just inherited something from, my grandparents, and I actually don't know what to do. And I'm really worried about making a mistake. And that is a very common thing because, again, no one talks about money. And who do you go to? And often, maybe you'll think, well, I should go to the bank and talk to an advisor. But again, that person has a motivation to work with you to make money off of you. And so there's a lot of people you need to be very careful who should and shouldn't, be involved in your finances. Who can you trust and who can you maybe not trust because they're actually a salesperson, not a planner. And so, yeah, that's part of the reason for the book is you need to understand you and money before you are in a position where maybe you do inherit, a substantial amount of money. So you know exactly what to do with it, what to put into savings, what to pay off your debt, like have that plan. But most importantly, not let emotions involved in that plan. Because that is why people, these lottery winners spend all their money. It's based off of a ton of different factors, including their emotions and just, maybe people pleasing or all these things that they hadn't worked through before that moment.
Yes, that's a really important point. Is just I like what you said about like you have to like uncover everything, like look under the hood, look into the past. It's icky work, I'm sure, for a lot of us. It's icky work for me. I felt confronted.
It's not fun. Yeah, it's supposed to make you uncomfortable. And like I wrote in the book, I'm not just telling you to do this. I did it myself. I did a lot of therapy during the course of me writing that book. It was a big roller coaster. It was a very interesting journey of self-reflection, and it was difficult in some moments. And I'd have some difficult conversations with my family about things that I'd never processed before. But I came out of it so much stronger and so much happier. And I have more tools in my toolbox, even personally, say, if I'm online and, there's an influencer that comes up talking about how much money they make, and that would always be a big trigger, still kind of is, because I then immediately compare myself to this person who I don't know anything about, but I know they're making more money than me. And then I would start to feel inadequate. Now I have more tools in my toolbox to be like, great, we're going to mute them, we're going to block them. This isn't serving me. Or when I'm going through those feelings of like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing so well. If this person's making this, I could be like, why do I feel like that when I was perfectly fine and happy before I saw this piece of content? Oh, right. It's because of this, and this. This goes from my past. This is a trigger. This is how I always feel when this happens. So now that I'm more mindful of the situation, I can, use some strategies to get myself back into that place of like calm, peace, and connection instead of like feeling really anxious or bad about myself because it's just not serving me and that doesn't help. But that's something that I practice at all the time.
And then you find yourself, speaking from experience when I was going through a big career change when I found you and your podcast, I'd find myself on the couch scrolling through, they didn't have TikTok then, but I'm sure now it would have been TikTok, like Instagram or like blog forums of like how to make like side hustle. I started signing up for those research, like those online research things that it's like you can make like this much money per month. Oh my God, I was getting all these emails to do these like research surveys. It was out of control, right? And only because I saw this post of like this person being promoted at work. And I was like, what was I doing leaving my, advertising career that I'd been working so hard in, pivoted, did my yoga teacher training, had no idea what was next. And I was like, but thank goodness I found you because I was like, okay, we can break this down.
Okay, good. I'm glad I helped.
yeah. It's all worked out, but it took a bit. Why do you think that people say, let's contextualize this to like the working parent who is my audience.
Yeah.
Why do you think, the stressed out parents of like little kids or whatever, why is it that they automatically go to, if we just were making a bit more money, this would all be easier?
Mm-hmm. Well, in certain circumstances, that could be true because if you had more money, you could hire someone to, do your laundry, do your dishes. Daycare is so expensive. You can maybe afford that. So money sometimes can be like, oh, if we had more money, we would then have more resources, which would free up a lot more time. So that does make sense. However, at a certain point, it's not about that. So you need to figure out, is it that or is it not really that? Is it that, I see this a lot with working moms especially. is it that you are doing all of the housework and you're also working and you're, being kind of the primary parent, but you have a husband or a wife who's there too, and they're not doing anything. They're not being kind of an equal partner. Then maybe that's actually the issue, is we need to have a conversation about how can we have more balance with everything that goes into just maintaining a home and our lives. I think too often it's sometimes easier to avoid the conversation. You're like, I'll just do it myself, because they never load the dishwasher properly, or they don't do laundry how I like it. But that's a Band-Aid. We need to have those kind of tough conversations to be like, if I want to have more time, so I'm not just working at work and then at home, whereas, my partner has a lot more free time, well, that we need to have a conversation about that, because that isn't fair. That's how burnout happens all the time with new moms, especially, is they just take on too much. And, again, this is like going beyond, and there's actually a few people I know who are like working on books on these kind of topics specifically, which is fascinating. But, women do have still in this world where a lot of people are like, oh no, the glass ceiling was broken and everything's equal. It absolutely isn't. There's still a lot of traditional gender roles that just we fall into at a certain point, and we need to really identify some of those so we can have, more time. Because I think often it's not, we don't need more money. We need more time, and more money potentially could help with that. Or a partner who fills that role so we don't have to do two roles is actually what we need.
It's such a good core, or a tie that you're connecting there between time and money, because those are the two, as a career coach for parents, those are the two levers that come up within minutes of talking to the person.
Right.
Why are you here? Boom. I don't have enough time. Boom. In order to get more time, I need more money.
Mm-hmm.
How do you if we start, I guess, going towards the past, I know that you're kind of you need to unravel that whole thing before you get into even the future, even thinking about when should I introduce allowance and all that. It feels like we got to go back. Yeah. How do you advise, a client if they're really struggling with that time, money, stress? Where do you even start?
Yeah, well, I would say, especially if you're a new parent, it really, I do believe when it comes to money, and then how do I teach my kids about money when I don't know what's going on? We do need to put the air oxygen mask on yourself first before we can teach anything to our kids. So we need to fix ourselves before we can fix anybody else, or before we can be a teacher to someone else. And so you need to really understand, what is the origin story for me and my money? What was my first interaction with money? That was at the beginning of the book, where I walk you through an exercise to really uncover your first money memory, to see, has that one instance that, if you can remember something that happened to you that had to do with money when you were really young, 4, 5, 6, and you're, in your 30s and 40s or whatever, that means that really had a big impact on you, and probably is still impacting you. That may have kind of set the tone for you in money, and you may not have realized it, and you've just been going along this whole time with oh, well, that actually answers a lot of questions I've had. And so, for example, I, share my own story of how I've always had this complex relationship with money and shame, and I never knew where that feeling started from. And it turned out it was this event that happened when I was 4 years old. I stole something and, was caught, and I felt very ashamed for that whole situation, of course.
Let's just cut in here. It's a gumball, by the way.
It's a gumball. I didn't steal anything crazy. It was a 25-cent gumball.
Spoiler alert.
And all 30 years later, still really regretful. But I realized, I never let that go. I never healed from that little trauma. I was so traumatized and embarrassed by that situation, for not only being ashamed that I did something wrong, but putting shame on my family, making us look bad. Oh my gosh, that, my mom's kid, she stole something. That's so, terrible. What a terrible kid. And so I, through therapy and going through all of, the exercises in my book, again, I did all of them myself to kind of heal myself. I realized, I have a certain story that I've been telling myself about money. And, other things have impacted it, some other, traumas and life experiences, where I always felt like I just was not good enough, and I always had to try harder to be better or to prove something. That no, I am a good person. And I always felt well, if I get more money, if I'm more successful, then that will be the solution. That will fix everything. But no matter how much I got or where I was at in my career, I still always felt inadequate because you can always find someone who's doing better than you. And so it wasn't until I really started understanding me and my money, my relationship with money, that I was able to start and really outline where am I at right now with money and where would I like to be. I don't like to feel icky with money, whereas most people, we do feel bad about money. It makes us feel bad when we think about it. I don't want to feel like that anymore. That's terrible. Like I'm soon going to be turning 40 in a few years, and I don't want to feel this feeling in that next decade. And so for me, it was really about breaking down my relationship with money now, writing where I'd like it to be, and trying to fill those gaps and see, okay, what are some of those events that happened that, oh, this happened to me when this, trauma kind of resurfaces and I get triggered. My behavior is like this, and I usually use money as a way to kind of self-soothe. There's all of these things I kind of go together that will eventually lead you to a place of, oh, that makes so much sense why no matter how much I earn, I never feel good enough. Or no matter how much I spend, it feels good for a minute and then I don't feel good and then I have to do it again and I can't get off this hamster wheel of overspending. So it's really just about better, if you would understand your relationship with money, where it started, what has impacted it, and to really kind of sit back and see, oh, that's what's going on. You'll be in such a better position to then, throw out the bad, keep the good, and restructure it. So when you're at a point where you do want to talk to your kids about money, and I highly encourage you to talk to your kids about money earlier than, when they're a teenager, because they know about money. It's everywhere, right? They see commercials. They know about money. Have those conversations and do what you wish you had maybe when they were their age. So talk about money in a way where there's no shame or blame or judgment, but just recognizing, well, money's just a tool. It's something you earn. It's something that you then spend to get things that you want or that you need, and really take the power out of money, because it's just a mechanism, but it's not a character. It's not a person. It's not a thing. But sometimes it is kind of such a big character in our lives. We allow it to have that power over us, but really we need to take our power back.
As you were talking, it's making me think of just the words quiet confidence kept coming up. I think I was starting to make it in my head. I was starting to do a little processing myself as I was doing when I was listening to your book, because I listened to your beautiful audiobook. Your voice is so soothing. And I was just thinking about quiet confidence, and I was kind of sitting there also laughing to myself that it's kind of like this whole like old money trend. Like people are trying to dress like old money or whatever.
Yeah.
And what's like funny about all of that is that there's something, it's taking the air out of it, because it's not flashy. It's not in your face. It's not talking about money in a big way or in a crass way. It's just like this, not apologizing for it.
Yeah.
That's where I want to be. I want to be in a place where I'm not apologizing for it. I'm not explaining a situation. I'm not explaining why I have a nanny, which I fall into that trap all the time. And it's a weird one. And I'm like, we have a nanny because COVID. Oh my God. It's like, it's horrific. I hear myself and I'm like, this is so weird. I'm making this weird. Nobody cares. Cool. You have a nanny. Great.
No. And if they're judgmental about that, that's their thing.
Yes.
That is their relationship with money, their judgment. Likely they learned something when they were younger about, again, I talk about in the book, we all come from somewhere and learn things directly, indirectly from our parents. And those include some of our values to do with money. And so a lot of us, if we were especially raised lower income, we would look to the people who are higher income and have judgments on the things that they have. A lot of it has to do with like envy. We were envious that they had those things and we did not have those things. Yeah. And so we would try to rationalize, they haven't, they have money, as if that's a bad thing. And I kind of, I have a lot of those things that I had to rework because those are not helpful. Those are going to be self-limiting beliefs. If you feel like having money is bad, then you are going to limit how much money that maybe you intend to earn yourself, or, you're going to save. Like there's this one person I interviewed for the book. He came from a low income background and his parents had very conflicting values and beliefs about money, which was very confusing for him growing up, where they thought money was the root of all evil. And, people with wealth, they got it unethically. They're all bad people. But also, if we only had more money, our lives would be so much better and everything would be great. And you're like, so which one is it? Money bad or is money good? And because of that, he had a very difficult time sticking to a budget, or he never even had a budget, and he would spend his money kind of freely because he didn't actually want to keep it, because he's like, oh no, I don't want it near me. So he's kind of like rejecting money, because he's like, well, if I accumulate money, then I might get into that position of having wealth, and then I don't want to be a bad person. But then on the other side, then he was spending too much money, and then he got into debt. And so he needed to recognize that, yeah, this isn't working for me. These beliefs that I got from my parents are not serving me. They're actually really hurting me. And I actually don't want to end up like my parents, because I see them now, they're in their retirement and they don't have enough savings to sustain themselves. So what can I do now to kind of, again, let go of the things that are not helpful? And these values, they don't really come from me. They come from them and their situation, their past, their childhoods. And what can I adopt instead? A better mindset. And so he was able to kind of get rid of this idea that money is the root of all evil. And also that's not the Bible verse anyway. It's the love of money is the root of all evil, which is like, yeah, don't be materialistic. Don't be money obsessed, which I think we can all agree. Yeah, that's not a good thing. But also he's like, oh, but if I accumulate more wealth for myself, not only will I be able to be in a more secure position for me and take care of me, which is great, but then I'll also have more resources to help others. I can help my community more. I could donate money to charity. I can do all these other things because I have more resources. And isn't that a good thing? So it's really about reframing some of those things that we don't know where they come from until you take a good think. You're like, oh yeah, that's not even something I believe in. Why do I still think that?
It's so funny. And it sounds like it's also having empathy. And you talk a lot about empathy in the book, which I thought was really cool. And it's not just having empathy for others and never knowing what another person's context or situation is. We make so many assumptions in that.
So many assumptions.
And it's sad, really. But I think it sounds like it's also having empathy for yourself and like your little self of like however you grew up and in whatever context and situation you grew up, that wasn't, you had nothing to do with it.
It wasn't your fault, and it had nothing to do with you because you were a child. And so a lot of these things that we have as adults, we got when we were children, but they're not helping us. They're not serving us. They're hurting us likely. And so we need to let those go. But before we do that, we have to recognize what the hell are they? Because most of us are running on autopilot with our money beliefs and values and feelings. And so that's why the start of the book is really like, let's talk about your feelings with money. Because I bet no one has ever asked you, how does money make you feel? Like really feel. Let's dig into it. Because guaranteed, it's like there are, a select few of people be like, actually feel really good. Awesome. You probably don't need my book. But for most of us, we have other feelings, and they are, shame, guilt, anxiety, envy, despair, all these really heavy kind of feelings that we need to work through. Otherwise, we're just going to be, again, on the hamster wheel a couple years later in the exact same situation.
Yes. And you know what? They might not need to read your book for themselves, but they should read your book for others, because I think it does expose a huge amount of empathy for those around you. Like talking about that nanny situation, it's so interesting to be like, I have a nanny, and my baggage, I then try to justify why we have a nanny. Yeah. Why we have this, why we have that, whatever. And then if a person makes a face or kind of has like a look, I start to project what I think their money story is, and I'm not acting with empathy. And so then I think, they might just be thinking, or they might smell a bad smell or whatever, right?
There's so many things.
There's so many things. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, like I'm justified. It's so bizarre. You're trying to make sense of the world around you constantly. And it's just, you just need to have more empathy. Like you just need to say, and also it's none of your business.
It's other people's money is none of your business, and your money is no one else's business.
No.
And I think, again, if someone has a judgment, that's on them. It has nothing to do with you. But if you're doing the things you're like, well, I can afford a nanny, I need a nanny, I got a nanny, what's the problem? There's no problem. No. And so it's helping your life, and you've got your plan and you're doing it, and that's wonderful. But again, it's I think we are just so conscious of, at the end of the day, and I think I mentioned this in the book as well, the reason we behave or feel or think about things is because we're constantly just thinking about other people. How do people perceive us? I want to be liked. Will I be liked or less liked if I reveal this information? And so probably thinking, if I reveal that I have a nanny and don't justify it, then maybe I'll be less likable, or maybe they'll, they won't invite me to whatever because I don't fit their idea of what a mom should be. And a mom should be working 24/7 or something like that. But that's just not the reality of it. So I think part of it is we are so focused on what other people think, or, but what I found is most people are too busy actually thinking about what other themselves and how other people perceive them. They're not really thinking about you. They're too busy thinking they're in the same position, So,
oh my God.
like you're thinking like, oh, are they judging me because I have a nanny? And they're probably like, oh my gosh, is she judging me because I don't have a nanny?
Totally. I'm like, I promise I spend time with my kids. That's the next train of thought.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, are they judging me because they think I'm some like multimillionaire, or are they judging me because I always assume they're judging me, and I'm trying to decide which one it is. Oh, are they judging me because they think I have money, or are they judging me because they think I don't love my kids and I don't spend time with them? So then I start being like, it's great, we get to see each other at lunch. No. Oh my God, it's like
That's wild.
It's insane.
And also, it's just like there's a lot. I don't know. Yeah, that's a complex one. That's really complex.
And childcare is like
childcare is such a hot topic. It's so
topic.
complicated.
Yeah,
I think women especially, we get that judgment of, oh, you're deciding to work and you're not going to stay at home. I'm like, well, number one, how can you afford to stay at home with the cost of living as it is? Like, we generally need people who have some kind of income stream coming in. But also, why would we're not judging the man that he has a nanny. He also has the nanny. You know what I mean? Why is the judgment always on the women? That doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. Okay, so we hear a lot that this is such an expensive phase of life. You know what? You're just in an expensive phase of life. And it almost feels like this resignation. And I've said it, and I heard it from I have an incredible financial planner in my life who's empathetic and kind, and he's always trying to reassure us you're in an expensive phase of life, and it's helpful. And at the same time, it sometimes makes it feel like you were talking about that vision, like the vision down the line, and how important it is to really like understand what you're striving for and why. How much do you want to give? What kind of beautiful life do you want for you, not based on what the Joneses think or are perceiving? So how do we reconcile those two pieces of feeling like we're in it and it's like tricky, and everybody you talk to is talking about groceries, and everybody's talking about how expensive kids are, and everyone's like, oh, baseball's this much. Like, everyone's talking about money in such a negative. They're not actually talking about money.
No.
They're talking about this like, oh, isn't this an expensive phase of life? And it's like it's like talking about the shitty weather.
Yeah. You're like, it's raining. So.
It is raining. We're in Vancouver today. It's raining. Yeah. And at the same time, we're supposed to hold this vision and manifest this like future beautiful life. But the two things feel so far away from one another. How console us as parents? How can a parent, oh my gosh, reconcile these two huge pieces that we are trying to reconcile?
I'd say one
constantly.
kind of thing that you can try is talk to parents who are out of that phase of life. The ones that the kids are in college or they've moved out. And just to see like, what's that like? Because especially when you're a mom, you're likely with the similar group of people in the same phase. And so that's all you see. So that feels like that's the only thing that exists. And so I think it'd be really important to, try to find in some way, whether it's through like friends, family, who's in the next phase, and can I talk to them about what that looks like, what that feels like, what they wish they did. Sometimes we're like, oh, actually, when we were in that phase, it felt like it was taking forever, but then actually you blink and it just went by so quickly. I really wish I enjoyed the journey instead of complained like, can't wait till this is over. And now it's over, and now the kids are gone, and now I'm an empty nester. And that's often what I hear from people in that phase is they wish they maybe did things a little bit differently or enjoyed things a bit more instead of just focusing on some of the really tough parts of it. So that's one thing I would suggest. But also the other thing is, especially when it comes to any kind of like financial planning, the thing that really gets us through those hard times is that vision of the future, of when we get over this big hump of, we have, 3 kids, they're in school, they have all these extracurricular activities, everything is just chaotic and expensive. Oh my gosh. It does feel like it's going to last forever, but then it really doesn't. I mean, I'm not a mom, but I've got a niece, and somehow she's 6 years old. And I'm like, how did that happen? She was a baby yesterday. She was a baby. What the hell? Now she's like this child who is very smart and having full conversations with me. And I'm like, what? And so life, I mean, I find like this, especially too, as I'm in my late 30s, life goes by so quickly. And so, but what does get you through those hard times is having that what are we working towards? And how can we also then celebrate all of those milestones? So even during those tough times, you're probably going to experience some really amazing milestones and those amazing things that you see your kids able to do. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they pass that test or whatever the case is. You've got to celebrate those things instead of, so it's about balancing of being present in the moment, but never forgetting what we're working towards. So enjoy what you got now and don't just focus on the negative, and maybe catch yourself when you are talking like that, especially you and your partner. If you're getting into that kind of mode back and forth, you need to be like, whoa, let's maybe change our tune a little bit, because the more positive talk that we do with each other, that actually makes things, sometimes it just makes things a little bit lighter. I do that a lot. I am a natural complainer, and I've had to work really hard on recognizing when I'm doing that and be like, oh, I don't feel good when I complain all the time, because then it just feels like everything's awful. If we start just focusing on, or not just focusing, but having a bigger focus on, but what's working, what's going well, what are some really things that we could be really happy about, and let's talk about those, like 80%, and then complain 20%. That might, be the thing that you need just to kind of, get a little bit of a release, but also focus on how lucky and privileged and all the good things that are actually happening.
That's so true. So really celebrating some of the smaller milestones along the way. Like we all have the big visions. Say there's like the infinity pool or the vacation you want to go on, sitting in the pod or whatever it is on the first class. And you can still hold that, but it sounds like you're saying like break it down too and enjoy some of those small moments. Something else, a question I need to ask you is, do you find yourself kind of advising people or hearing people who are in this phase who maybe actually should like loosen the purse strings a tiny bit so that they can find more enjoyment? Like I've actually thought about, an exercise that my husband and I did do when we were deciding about childcare. There was a lot of factors that went into it, which I know now I don't need to justify. And one of them was like, we want to ease the burden to the best of our ability, not burden of children, but the stuff around it. And like, we want to be in our house with our kids and we would like to have a little bit of extra support around the house. And so in order to show up the best way that we want to, and, based on the values and the vision we have, this was a decision that we made. And I'm really thanking my previous self 4 years ago for doing that. Do you find that? Are there times where you're like, just allow yourself a bit, like spend a tiny bit more where you can afford it so that you can enjoy the process, not just wait for this like checkout at the end?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I see that a lot with especially people who are very focused on, say, retiring one day. They push all of their dreams and goals into retirement. And, like retirement could last 30 or 40 years. If you're lucky, it could also last 10. And so why are you not enjoying your life while you're saving for retirement? I see that a lot with the older generations is they just put everything into retirement. I'll do that. I'll start painting and write my great novel when I'm retired. When you're like, but you can do it now on an hour a day or so, whatever you want. You can do whatever you want right now. You're not old. You can do whatever you want. And so I think it depends. It's a case-by-case basis for sure, depending on what your financial situation is. What I find, and I talk about this kind of at the end of the book, where we talk more about happiness and money and the things that actually get us happiness. Let's not lose sight of what actually brings us long-term joy. And it's really time and experiences. That's what it is. And so if you have the resources to help you get more time and those memories, absolutely do it. But if maybe you're too focused on, buying those material things, again, which most of us buy material goods, not for ourselves, but for others. We want someone to comment on our outfit, our car, our house, whatever. The joy that will bring is so fleeting. And so we really do need to shift the idea of how do we spend our money and why, and will it really produce the biggest impact in a positive way. And so for you found a way that, okay, we do have the resources to free up some more time, then let's do that. That's amazing. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend like, oh, you've got some more resources. Yeah, you can buy that more expensive car. Because I'm like, will it give you exponential happiness compared to, say, like a family trip? Honestly, the data shows no, it's not going to make you that much happier.
Oh, that hits. That really hits.
Yeah.
And it's so funny how there's so much, I think you said it maybe in the book or just in general, like it's just so much of this is stuff that we know, but when you contextualize it and you remind yourself, like, yes, we know that materialism isn't at like the best thing in the entire world. But
we all know that, but you definitely need to be reminded because I mean, of course you need to be reminded because literally everything external, there's advertisements, there's TV shows, movies, social media, they are all advertising to us, telling us, no, you do need that material thing. Your life will only be complete if you buy this new thing or this new thing. And believe me, I get caught up in that too. I'm like, well, if only I get a better coffee maker or something like that. And you're like, that actually is not going to change anything. Though I do love my Nespresso. That was a game changer for me. But I don't need a brand new one. They always come out with different versions. I'm like, I don't need a new version. This one is going to last me until it breaks.
I don't need the pink one.
I don't need all of my appliances to be the same color. That's fine. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter. Literally, rarely do I have like people coming over every weekend and they would never critique my appliances. No one cares, right? But we often focus on the wrong things because everything externally is telling us what to think. And so we really do need to kind of police ourselves a little bit to be like, whoa, what's going on here? Oh, I'm being like, I've been saying this in my mind sometimes where I'm like, oh my gosh, I just got influenced. It happens. It's real. Influencers really do influence.
Yes.
I get influenced just like everybody else. Yeah. And you need to be like, is this, again, there's nothing wrong with buying something through an influencer if it's something that you want, you need, you can afford, and it feels that again, it's going to help you get more time or something that will give you that long-term joy. But most of the time they're trying to hawk something that's you're going to get. And then you're like, I was happy for an hour.
Yes.
Now what? No, I will never get that money back. Great.
No, amen. The fear of wealth is an interesting one, I know. So depending on, if someone's doing this work and they're kind of hitting up against this interesting phase of life where they're like maybe on the brink, they're like, okay, I'm healing my money story. Yeah. I'm getting to a point where I can feel it coming. The vision is maybe on its way. We're kind of getting to the, maybe especially as this audience of maybe 2 income earners in a house, they might be reaching almost their peak of what's the word? Income.
Yep, got it.
Money coming in.
Money.
And they start to have this like, maybe there's self-sabotage or there's like a fear of like, what happens if I gain the wealth? Like, what then?
Yeah. I mean, well, the self-sabotage, I see that a lot. I see that a lot with, it's very visible with people who are like on debt repayment journeys. So I saw that a lot when I started blogging. There is a lot of specific categories of personal finance blogs. Some of them were just debt blogs. They would talk about their debt journey, paying off debt. And often what would happen, because sometimes those blogs would go dead and then they would be revitalized a year or two after because they're back in debt, is because they focus so much on paying off this debt, they never learned the skills at the same time on how to save or invest. And I think they also maybe got so stuck in this idea that I am in debt, that is my identity. They didn't know how to then identify to, well, you're no longer in debt, you're debt free. Now you're a saver. Now you're an investor. Now you're building wealth. And so because they didn't maybe do that inner work and figure out their money story, or how did you even get into debt? Because I guess, spoiler, most people don't get into debt because they are frivolous or they're bad with money or they just overspend. Well, no, there's always something that is pushing people to, it could either be just like, that's the situation. They were low income. All these things were not working to help them get out of poverty. And so it's just a very difficult situation. Or people that maybe came from, middle income families or even higher income families and they're in debt. I mean, it could be for a number of reasons that are maybe more internal, such as like, if, again, I talk about this in the book with, if you have any kind of trauma, you may use money as a way to soothe yourself. And so that's why there's a lot of people out there who are shopaholics. They're not shopping because they don't know that they can't afford, like they're not doing it because they're like, well, I just like to shop and I just have a problem. I have a shopping addiction. No, you were trying to soothe something internally with money and you just need that dopamine hit and then it goes away and then you need it again and again and again. And so until you really figure out what is actually the cause of the situation, then you're never going to be able to kind of figure that out. So I think if you have like a big actual fear of accumulating wealth, you need to figure out why. And it could be that, well, even though I'm doing probably better than anyone in my family, I'm actually kind of ashamed of that because everyone in my family isn't doing so well financially. And I don't want them to judge me because they're very judgmental with people who have wealth. And so I never want to bring up money. I kind of hide how well we're doing, all of these things. And so me maybe self-sabotaging makes me feel a little bit better because then I'm not this person that I'm afraid to become because of all this judgment and shame that I have wrapped up into that. So there's
Oh
always
my
something
goodness.
deeper.
There's always something deeper, layers.
Yeah.
Who do you advise people? So someone's like, oh my gosh, this is just hitting home. How do you choose someone to maybe unravel the psychological side of this, but then also like the practical, logistical, let's look at your accounts and let's like really open up the hood there?
Yeah. So the back of the book or the end of the book, I kind of talk about there is a credential called financial therapist. It only exists in the States, not in Canada or any other country. But if you are in the US, that may be someone that you want to look into because they can kind of help with both the, money mindset stuff and also maybe some of the practical stuff. It depends. Everyone's different. Like to get that designation, you have to either be a financial planner or a therapist. And then they kind of teach you the financial therapy component, which is helping people kind of work through some of those blocks and things like that. So they may or may not be actually someone to be like, oh, I can help you make a financial plan. Because if they're not a CFP, then they can't actually do that. But in Canada, we don't have that designation. Basically, it's two completely kind of different segments. We've got therapists and then we've got financial planners. And so for the practical how-to money stuff, that's when you want to talk to either a QAFP, so that's the designation Qualified Associate Financial Planner. Those are great because their fees are probably a little bit lower than a CFP because CFPs, Certified Financial Planner, they typically you get that designation because you want to work your way up in the financial industry. You want to work with high net worth individuals. And so find either a QAFP or CFP or my designation. I'm working towards my QAFP right now. But you could also work with an Accredited Financial Counsellor Canada. Those would be someone maybe good for a little bit less complex situations, more cash flow, debt, budgeting, kind of just nothing too complex. But if you just need someone to like kind of give you a jump start, create a foundation, that might also be a credential you want to look into. That's for the money kind of part, for like, how do we structure things? What am I not doing financially that I need to? And then for all the mindset stuff, the inner working stuff, that's when you want to work with a therapist. Now, they may not be able to help you specifically. Like, again, I worked with, I think, 3 different therapists. Am I right? 3? Yeah, I think 3, maybe 4. While I was doing the book. Yeah, maybe it was 4. And I did a couple of different forms of therapy. And I told them, I'm working on a book, but this is also for me. And they're like, oh yeah, I don't know anything about money. And they're like, actually, I have some questions about money. So they won't be able to help you specifically, I think, with money, quote unquote, but they will be able to help you unpack. Like if money is this thing that is, blocking you in some way, they'll be able to help you figure out how can we unblock it. So just like, again, your thing isn't money, if that's not the issue, it could be food, it could be body image, it could be all these different things. A therapist can help you with those things to try to figure out, well, like at the end of the day, it's never actually about the thing that you think it is. It's always something deeper. And so that's when you want to find that out. And then also find out what is the form of therapy that works for me. And so there's cognitive behavioral therapy. There's regular talk therapy that is kind of like the typical one that we always kind of think of when we think about therapy. I did 2 that were really great. EMDR, which is specific for trauma. It's to kind of help you reprocess trauma so you can heal from it, which is really great. And IFS, internal family systems, which I loved, which is really better understanding kind of like, they don't use this term, but to most people will understand like your inner child, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Really understand the different parts of you, what are their roles, and again, what's the block, what's going on. And so, get interested in, there's more than one type of therapy. There are. And for me, it was the EMDR, the IFS that really moved the needle because I was doing talk therapy for years before that.
Yeah.
And we'd never talked about like my childhood or trauma before. And it was still helpful, but it didn't, for me, give me that kind of, breakthrough until I did those other forms of therapy. So just take a look at what's out there to see what might actually be like, that might work.
Thank you so much for opening up and like and sharing all of that because I think that the old like takes a village.
Yeah.
LOL. But truly, I think we have to really, I'm just so into really expanding what we see as what that village is, whether you're a parent or not. But this is a parenting podcast. It's like, who's on your board of directors? That's what I say with clients a lot.
I love that.
Who's in that? Who's in that for you? And there's, maybe your best friend, there's your parents, I have 3 sisters. I call one sister for one thing. I call another sister for another thing.
I've got 2 sisters and they have different rules.
Exactly.
For sure.
Your friends have different roles.
One I send crazy memes to, the other one, she's not even on Instagram. So yeah.
Exactly. There's always the one sister not on Instagram.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's so true. And I love that you're even saying, like, with therapy, you can diversify your portfolio there. And yes, that was an intended joke because I'm talking to Jessica Moorhouse. Diversify everything. I think it's like the people who are like, I go to my chiropractor for everything and my chiropractor like heals my inner child. I'm like,
he shouldn't, or they shouldn't.
Trying to hide my eye roll here, but like I got feelings about that.
They are not qualified to do that.
No.
Or one thing I mentioned in the book is also be careful with the term coach, because a lot of people find, oh, I have a life coach. I'm like, they are different than a therapist. They do different things.
Yes.
So if your life coach is therapizing you, you probably shouldn't be working with them because they are not qualified. Believe me, I'm not a therapist at all. And I make it very clear in my book. I'm like, I'm not a therapist, even though I talk a lot about psychology and therapy in this book.
Yes.
So don't come to me for therapy because I cannot help you, but I can help you with your money and just exploring other aspects. So really know who you want on your board of directors and who is a good fit for that. Life coaches, I think, have a specific, like a great role for certain people, but they do a very different thing than therapy. They can help you like set up your foundation and help you prioritize and goal set and things like that. But, just be aware of that.
1,000%. And since
I say that about money coaches too, because there's,
yes.
Again, I gave those financial designations, and then there's people who can call themselves money coaches. Money coach is not a license or anything. Anyone can call themselves a money coach. And so, there's no regulation or anything like that with that term. And so, again, if you're like, I want a financial plan, I hired so-and-so money coach. I'm like, well, you really should always ask, like, what's your background? What's your experience? What are your credentials to know if they are qualified to do the things that they're saying to do? Because you don't want to, like, pay a bunch of money and you're like, I didn't get anything. It's like, oh, yeah, because they weren't qualified to do what they said they could do, right?
And there's a scope of practice. I think I just need to say this. We're running out of time, but since we're talking. No. I'm like trying to be respectful of your time because you're just giving so many good golden nuggets here. Me too. This is why we're going to be fast friends. It's the whole coaching thing. So I'm going to put in the show notes the certifications that you shared because I think it is so important to be prudent. And I think you're so right about the coaching thing. Like I've gotten on my soapbox about this before. I am an International Coach Federation certified coach. Mm-hmm. I went to school. I went to Royal Roads. I did an almost year-long program for this. Yep. And they beat it into us, our limitations and our scope, right? Like they weren't trying to be negative. They're just like, know your boundaries.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important thing that I took out of becoming a certified coach. An executive coach is knowing my boundaries. And I think the problem is when you're working with somebody who doesn't have any sort of foundation or training of which they would beat in. Every designation has a whole, multiple
what you can
days,
and cannot do.
What you can and cannot do.
Yeah, like even, for example, if you have a QAFP or CFP, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're also licensed and qualified to give investment advice. So, right? If like you're working with a CFP and they're like, oh yeah, no, I can manage your investments. They may not be licensed. And so that's illegal. We don't want to do that.
Yes. It's terrifying. And I think it's so important for people to know these things because you're like, oh, but the person's great. They seem really knowledgeable. They've been in finance for 25 years.
Yeah.
It's just, you just have to know. You just have to be like, it's like hiring a life coach who didn't go to any sort of school. Yeah. That's totally fine. I actually think I've gotten to a point where I think that's fine as long as you know what
you're getting yourself into.
And what are you bringing to the table? Like, I don't think you should talk to them about suicidal ideation. You absolutely should not. And if that person's not saying, I have to stop right here.
And they should be referring you to someone.
They should be referring you out. Mm-hmm. Like, that's problematic, right? So you just have to be intuitive. You just have to do your research. Just know. Mm-hmm. Before you go, I have to ask you, couple tips, practical takeaways for the parent listening who's feeling a bit overwhelmed by money. They're like, they're going to read your book. They're going to start like really figuring out where their money stories come from. But today, this weekend, this month, what are a few things that they could just like focus on or do to just feel a bit better or practically set themselves up? Oh my gosh, and we have to talk about talking to kids about money too. So if we can wrap that in there.
I'll try to put that all together. So first thing, for a practical thing, and I do have a section in my book that I break down how to create a spending plan. That's just a nicer word for budget, because a lot of people hate that term budget, which I completely get. And so if you don't currently have a plan for your money, a spending plan, money coming in, money going out, and what's going to savings, investments, expenses, and tracking your expenses and your net worth every single month, that's kind of the three things. Create a spending plan, track your spending, track your net worth every single month. Not only, I know that sounds arduous and you're like, I don't have time for that. I promise, once it's set up, which may take, an hour or two, you don't have to spend more than maybe an hour, hour and a half per month on that. And we all have that kind of time. We can find that time. If we can find time to do all these other things, we can find time for that. Because again, this is your part. I always tell people, this is part of your financial wellness. It's financial self-care. And so when you have clarity with your money, you naturally become less stressed and anxious about it, because you know what's going on. Why we get anxious and stressed about money is often because we actually don't know what's happening. You're like, do I have enough? I don't know. Maybe it's worse than I thought. And then sometimes, when I'm working with a client, we'll look at their situation. They're like, oh, that's not so bad. I'm like, right? So when if you have that information, it will just help you feel a lot more grounded. Okay, talking a little bit more about the kids. So honestly, okay, so I don't talk too much about this in the book, but I do have a friend of mine who just came out. She's Canadian. She just came out with a book called Making Bank. I'd say it is more for like you give it to your teenager, your preteen, and they learn about money, which is great. There's no other book that's really that's like for the kid, like written for the kid. So that's a great resource I'd like to kind of tell you about. Shannon Lee Simmons, she's amazing, and she just came out with that book. But for allowances, that's another thing you have to do that inner work, because if I had there was a time when me and my husband were thinking about having kids, and I'm like, oh, I would never give my kids an allowance. And the reason I said that was because I never got an allowance. And it wasn't because my parents didn't believe in it, but that's what I thought, because that's what they said. They're like, oh, we don't believe in it. They couldn't afford an allowance. They couldn't afford allowances. And so I thought, oh, well, that's what pushed me to, be so focused, ambitious, and I want to start working early. No, I think allowances are honestly a pretty great tool to help teach your kids how to budget early, how to earn and feel like, oh, wow, get that financial independence, and just to learn the things that most of us never learned in schools and wish we did, and then how to figure it out in adulthood. If you could teach your kids, how to earn money, how to put some of it away for savings, some for charitable donations or giving back, some for, just playing around fun money, and some for your needs. If you teach them that early on, they will be set up for life when they are in college and university or as an adult. And having conversations about money early on, don't do what most of our parents did, which is money is taboo. Let's not talk about it, because we know how that ended up. We're all uncomfortable talking about money. And it just kind of, stifled us a bit. So have those conversations about money and listen to their questions. And if there is something that they ask you, like, how much do you and mom make, and you're uncomfortable about it, don't just say, well, that's inappropriate, or you shouldn't ask, just be like, listen and give an honest answer. Be like, that's a great question. It's not really something, just find some way to be like, we're not going to share that information. But what we can share is, in this particular role that I currently have, let's look online. The role that has, typically you can earn between this and this. Because maybe your fear is like, I just don't want him going on schoolyard and telling everyone how much I earn. And then that gets back to the parents, right? Yeah. But, if if the parents can easily find out what your role is, they probably already have an estimate of how much you make. So just, listen, encourage questions, and give thoughtful answers.
Yeah. I love that. And the term, the phrase, we can't afford that.
Oh, let's try to get rid of that. Let's try to, because again, that was something that was in brain. I'm still working through in my mind to tell myself, yeah, you can afford that, Jessica. It's fine. What can you say instead? Such as, that's not really in our the goals that we have right now for our money. Or, well, we have a specific family budget right now, and that's not really in there at this moment. But you know what? Great thing that you brought up, that you want to go to Disneyland. Let's talk about that in the future. Let's put it on our future goals list and keep the conversation going, instead of just saying, no, we can't. Even if that's the truth, we cannot afford it. What's something else we can say that's kind of more positive and encourages more conversation?
That's a great
and doesn't make
point.
them feel bad for asking the question.
No,
then they'll
because
stop
it's
asking.
also, but then it's not shutting yourself down either. Like if you're saying no, we can't afford that. People like us will never be able to afford that, or
People
we
like
can't.
now that's part of your identity, and then
Yeah.
it's not something that you can change. People
No.
like us, but again, money is so fluid, and it's anyone can change their financial situation. Again, sometimes it's easier for others than some other people. There's a big part of my book talks about privilege, but I think sometimes saying, well, we can't afford that right now, or that's not, I don't even like the afford part. It's just like, well, it's not in the family budget right now, but thanks for bringing that up. And we'll definitely consider it and figure out maybe we can make a plan for that in the future. Because then there's like hope. And then you're thinking about solutions. How can we figure that out? And maybe they'll, come up with their own idea of like, oh, if we just did this, this, and this, we could afford that. And that is what you want. Because as an adult, you don't want to, be in a situation where like, well, I can't afford that, instead of trying to find what's a solution for this problem.
Yes. And it feels like there's just so much, like Dr. Becky's a, very prolific figure in the parenting space right now. It's very much like, how can we use some of her language around like, not using like really harsh, finite like answers to things, asking questions and like exploring like at their level, age appropriate, how to talk about these things. And like, it's like the thing that we're learning now where like you could have arguments, say, in front of your children, if that is the way that you communicate with your partner, for instance, but tie it up. So if like you have a financial discussion with a partner in front of your kids, wrap it up in a positive, affirmative way versus being like, throwing it's all easier said than done. But these are just things that I think work really well together.
Yeah. And just, think back of what did I not like about money when I was growing up, and how could I do something differently as a parent now?
Yes. Okay, Jessica, I asked this to everybody. I have to ask you now. What is something, and every time I'm like, there's got to be nothing. There's nothing. But what is something that you would say you're still trying to figure out in your own relationship with money?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I don't know if there's anything particularly new from the stuff that because I, again, went through a lot of introspection for the book. There's a lot of stuff I'm still practicing. So I've been like on a lot of podcasts and saying, I know I say this in the book, and guess what? I'm still working through this myself. And so, again, a lot of the I'm not good enough, the negative self-talk, that was very loud before I did all that therapy and was starting to write the book. It's not as loud now, but it still creeps up. And so I always have to catch myself. So I'm practicing when I'm preaching, so to speak. And so I'm a work in progress myself. And so that's what I think that's encouraging for people to know, though, because, I'm cured. I'm perfect. No, I'm still working through it, because we're all humans, and it takes a long time for us to heal and to change our brains and just some of our thoughts. So I'm still working through things.
Oh, okay.
But I'm much happier recognizing the things that I do need to work through, and know that, things are a little bit better. It's a little bit lighter now compared to where I was before doing any of this work.
And maybe kind of like the spending plan when you're looking at your finances once a month, like when you're doing that introspection, I find that I can move through things quicker.
Yeah.
When I have the support and the tools and the people in my board of directors, it's like you're doing the therapy, you still feel the feeling, but I find I can move through things quicker because I have the tools. And maybe that's kind of what you're saying too, is you're like,
Absolutely.
Hey, I've got the tools.
I just didn't have them before, but we have to use the tools, and we still have to, work with them.
Yes. Okay, Jessica, where can everybody find Everything But Money, your beautiful best-selling book that you've got out? Congratulations on that. And where can they find you online if they want to learn more from you?
Yes. So my website is, no, it's not everythingbutmoney.com. Though I think I was smart enough to buy that domain.
Buy that.
I think I bought it just to redirect. It's jessicamoorhouse.com. If you go to jessicamoorhouse.com/book, it has a bunch of information about where you can purchase the book no matter where you are, and some upcoming events that I'll be doing. So working on some more events that I'll be doing in the future. You can find me on Instagram at Jessica I. Moorhouse. And I also have a podcast myself that is more money centric called More Money Podcast. That we don't honestly talk. We talk about money, but we don't talk about like how to money. That's not that kind of podcast. It really is everything around money, how you feel about it, and just it's a nice listen just to get comfortable with money. So you can check that out as well.
It really is. And thank you for being such a force for this topic in Canada, especially. That is what drew me to you initially, and why I've been waiting to find the perfect person to come on this show to talk about money.
Oh, great.
But talk about it from a Canadian perspective. And you're a young woman. We're the same age. Like, it's just, you're such a breath of fresh air. And the More Money podcast is incredible. And you can search on podcast apps now. So if there's a topic that you want to explore, I actually encourage you to do that on Jessica's podcast, because that's a really cool way to do it. But the book is definitely this foundational Bible. Just, it's a really fun read too. I'm going to be honest. I also was like, oh, is this going to be like, like
no,
7 Habits of Highly Effective?
I love it.
Story driven.
Yeah, it's story driven. There are some like takeaways, that are really structured at the end of each chapter, because you might be like, what happened?
Yes.
Here's the takeaways.
Yes.
But no, I love books that are narrative first. And so that's really what it is. And I wanted it to be that you pick up this book. I'm not just slamming you with information.
No.
There is some information, but it's really focused on people and their stories. So you can see yourself in hopefully somebody's story.
100%. I feel like you're like hiding it. You're like hiding the broccoli and the bolognese because
That's
you're like,
exactly it. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you're not doing stats and figures and like, here's a balance sheet. Let's talk about T accounts. I was like, oh,
I don't like books like that. I'm so
we've
sick of
done
books like
it.
that myself.
No.
So no, I love a good, narrative.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And it's beautifully written. You're a beautiful writer. So
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.